We begin our second classical concert of the season with Mozart's Concerto for Flute and Harp, K299. From the age of 4, Mozart spent his early years touring Europe as a child prodigy, with his sister Nannerl, who also played, and his father Leopold, a famous violinist who acted as their manager. Wolfgang Amadeus performed all across Europe at a time when travel was difficult and dangerous. But as a result of this unusually metropolitan upbringing, he was able to hear an enormous amount of varied music that would have been denied him had he remained in his hometown of Salzburg. When he finally left Salzburg at the age of 21 in 1777, his goal was to find a job. Arriving in Paris in early 1778, he set about taking on students and trying to find a permanent position as a court musician. Almost immediately, Mozart began giving composition lessons to the youngest daughter of the Duke of Guin. The Duke was an excellent flutist, and he commissioned Mozart to compose a concerto he could perform with his daughter, a harpist. Mozart disliked the flute, complaining in a letter to his father about being obliged to write for an instrument which I cannot bear. But money talks, and he overcame these objections to compose one of his most charming works. The piece is an example of enlightened salon music at its finest. While not exactly profound, the concerto has an abundance of melodies even by Mozart standards, and overflows with easy invention and happiness. The first movement sparkles from its opening with oscillating C major arpeggios and a light texture of only strings, horns and oboes to ensure the harp and flute can always be heard. There follows an andantino that is almost embarrassing in its beauty, a gorgeous theme beginning in the strings that the flute and harp immediately repeat. The finale is a rambunctious rondo with echoes of hunting music in the horns. Never excessively virtuosic, the flute and harp solos are kind-hearted and untroubled, perfect for a duke and his daughter to enjoy together. These performances showcase two wonderful Jacksonville Symphony musicians, Principal Flute Les Roettges and Principal Harp Kayo Ishimaru-Fleisher. Les has been a member of the orchestra for 39 years and will retire next season. We're going to really miss him. When something isn't working in rehearsal, I always turn to Les and he always has a solution. Kayo is an extraordinary harpist, and I can't wait to collaborate with them in this delightful concerto. Francis Poulenc was a temperamental and emotional man, full of humour and irreverence. One of Les Six, the 6 French composers of the early 20th century, who reacted against the seriousness of Richard Wagner and Claude Debussy's Impressionism, he wrote a unique body of work, containing many songs, sonatas and concertos. In fact, our next classical concert features his delectable concerto for 2 pianos. Born in 1899, by the 1920s he was already famous, although with a reputation as a somewhat bourgeois, amateurish composer of unsubstantial music. 2 events in 1936 led to a reawakening of his faith. His friend, the composer Pierre-Octave Ferraud, was killed in a violent car crash, and Poulenc visited the sanctuary of Rocamadour. The effect of these events was profound. As Poulenc put it, "As I meditated on the fragility of our human frame, I was drawn once more to the life of the spirit. Rocamadour had the effect of restoring me to the faith of my childhood." There followed a new seriousness in his music, including a number of religious works, the pinnacle of which is his Gloria, completed in 1960. The Gloria can be seen as a summation of Poulenc's style. Written for soprano solo, chorus and orchestra, it's in 6 movements, the first of which begins in a heraldic style reminiscent of Stravinsky's Symphony of Psalms. The second movement, the Laudamus Te, which means "We praise you, O God," caused a scandal because of its seemingly irreverent setting of the text. This surprised Poulenc, who mused, "I wonder why. If you go to Florence, if you go to the Riccardi Palace, if you go to admire the sublime Gozzoli frescoes of the angels, you'll see a whole series of angels. And if you look at the angels very closely, there is one who is sticking out his tongue at his neighbour, right? I take the position that angels are not always well behaved." The Domine Deus is perhaps my favourite movement. in which the soprano soloist floats effortlessly above the orchestra. This mood continues in the finale, which begins Qui sedes ad dexteram patris, he who sits at the right hand of the Father, declaimed by the chorus without accompaniment in a manner that sounds almost medieval. There follows a gratingly dissonant major-minor chord before the music takes off in a boisterous allegro. The work ends extraordinarily calmly, as Poulenc directs, with the soprano solo singing Amen extremely softly. Poulenc later judged the Gloria as one of his finest works, writing to a friend, "The Gloria is without doubt the best thing I have done. The orchestration is marvellous, there is not a single note to be changed in the choral writing. I must confess that I have surprised myself. May it spare me a few days in purgatory, if I narrowly avoid going to hell." Tchaikovsky revered Mozart. Throughout his life, he returned to Amadeus's music for inspiration, finding in it the perfect balance of clarity, form, expressiveness, and beauty. We end this concert with Tchaikovsky's Serenade for strings, which is, like Mozartiana, an homage to his idol. The first movement especially seeks to imitate Mozart's style, beginning with a slow and stirring introduction of thick chords. This will return at the end of the work. There follows a dancing, intense allegro in sonata form, again recognizing Mozart. I always say that Tchaikovsky, not any of the Strausses, was the king of the waltz, and the second movement is one of his finest. It begins with a seductive rising scale in the first violins, with incredible elan and style. It's no wonder that the Serenade was so beloved by the great choreographer Georges Balanchine, who created a ballet after the same name to the music in 1934. The third movement is the emotional heart of the Serenade. It's slow, mournful, and shockingly beautiful. Marked elegy, literally meaning song of mourning, it too begins with a gently rising scale in the first violins, gradually building into an impassioned cry of grief. The finale, in contrast, is much lighter in character, based on a very earthy Russian dance. Towards its end, the powerful chords from the first movement return as a coda, before collapsing back into the original dance played by the first violins. The Serenade ends with a powerful and affirming C major chord.